ISD students. Today we will continue on our DBQ of looking at the Renaissance. Just a reminder, take out your notes from the lesson before because we're going to continue with those. We looked at one document, or actually a set of documents yesterday. We did an overview of a DBQ. We talked about what a good DBQ has. We went through the first document together. And today we're going to do two more sets of documents. All right, so just as a quick refresher from yesterday, the documents that you see on the left are going to be medieval documents. Okay, so this is what we're comparing to in the Renaissance, which is going to be on the right. Okay, so as we go throughout today, you're going to be comparing the left to the right, medieval to the Renaissance. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first kind of question that we have here. Here at the bottom, right here, it says, what techniques did they use during medieval times to cure illness? After you answer the question, underline a quote, or in our case, we're going to write it, that best shows their techniques. So feel free to pause this video and you can write down this question if you don't have it in front of you. Okay, so let's look at document 3, a medieval understanding of medicine. This is an excerpt from a history of Western medicine and surgery. Records from Dr. Usama ibn Munkadi from 1175. So it says, they brought to me a knight with a sore on his leg and a woman who was feeble-minded. To the knight I applied a small pouch of herbs, and the woman I put her to rest in bed. So a knight has come, he has a sore on his leg. We don't really have a lot of information about how bad it is. It could be like a cut, not really sure about that information. And we have a woman who is feeble-minded. At the time, feeble-minded could mean maybe she was depressed, or maybe she had a concussion and she was kind of woozy. Not really a great definition of what feeble-minded means in this case. It probably means like she couldn't think clearly or something like that. Continuing on with the document, then a French doctor came in and said, this man knows nothing about treating them. He then said, bring me a sharp axe. Then the doctor laid the leg of the knight on a block of wood and told the man to cut off the leg with an axe, upon which the marrow flowed out and the patient died on the spot. He then examined the woman and said, there is a devil in her head. He therefore took a razor, made a deep cross-shaped cut on her head, peeled away the skin until the bone of the skull was exposed, and rubbed it with salt. The woman also died instantly. So take a second to look at the question, what techniques did they use during medieval times to cure illness? After you answer the question, underline a quote that best shows their techniques. Go back into that document, find a kind of a quote that supports, pause this video, and then we will discuss when you unpause it. Okay, so some things that they did during medieval times to cure illness. So recommending rest. So he had the woman lay down initially. Then we have herbs, so placing herbs on the sore. Now, some herbs, do have medicinal properties. So it's not just like, oh, like they're throwing random plants on legs. A lot of herbs were known to have medicinal properties and were known to be very helpful to ailments. It's just really like we're unsure of what kind of herbs they put on there, so some of them couldn't be very helpful. But kind of the big takeaway probably is that they cut off limbs or bloodletting. So in medieval times, it was kind of believed that if you were sick, there was something wrong with your blood. So the thought was that blood is what is flowing through your body. So if you can clean your blood, then you will get better. Truly, they weren't entirely far off. I mean, we do dialysis today on patients today to try to clean their blood, but we don't do it by cutting off just limbs. So sometimes we would use leeches where they would have them suck out blood from a place that had been like piled with blood, and leeches are used in some cases today. The problem is that in medieval times they weren't doing it with moderation. It was kind of just like, cut off a limb and kind of see if it worked, which is not very helpful. So looking for a quote that shows how they did medicine in medieval times. I think This quote told a man to cut off the leg with the axe. That is pretty clear. Or this quote that says, "Bring me a sharp axe." That kind of shows how they go about the approach to medicine at this time. Um, the bone of the skull was exposed and rubbed with salt. I mean, any of these things. You just write down a quote that you think best answers the question. Okay, so let's move on to document 4. So let's take a look at the question that we have with document 4 here at the bottom of your screen. It says, number 5, what were some of Da Vinci's discoveries on the human body? How did he make these discoveries? After you answer the questions, underline a quote that best shows Da Vinci's methods. So let's go up to the document. So this is Leonardo da Vinci. Off to the left, we see some of his drawings and sketches. You can see that they're pretty detailed of muscles and bones and how they all work together. In this picture, sorry, I'm going to get this up. In this picture right here, you kind of just see the bones of the arm and the shoulder. And then in the picture below, he kind of adds on some of the muscles. So you can see how he's studying really intensely what the human body looked for. An artist will take, like if you go to school to become an artist or to study art, you'll take some classes on anatomy and physiology, because in order to be able to draw people accurately, and so it doesn't look like it looks like they're real, artists do have to study the human body, so it can be very beneficial. So this was kind of an early idea of that. All right, so let's go ahead and read through. So we're looking for discoveries Leonardo da Vinci made and how he did those. It says, Leonardo concentrated on human anatomy more systematically than ever before, and by the end of his life, he claimed that he had cut up more than 30 corpses. Leonardo compiled a series of 18 mostly double-sided sheets exploding with more than 240 individual drawings and more than 1,300 words of notes. Leonardo made many important discoveries. For instance, he produced the first accurate illustration of the human spine. He was one of the first to document liver disease. So first thing to know, just because it says he cut up corpses, I mean, these are people who have previously died. Some people will donate their body to science. People will do that even today. So I've read in multiple places where Leonardo da Vinci cut up bodies that had been donated to science. And so it's not like some weird thing he has going on, just so we're clear. Okay, so take a look at the question. It says, what were some of Da Vinci's discoveries on the human body? How did he make these discoveries? After you answer the question, underline a quote that best shows Da Vinci's method. So feel free to pause this video so you can kind of work through that question, and then once you play it again, we'll talk through. Okay, so looking at the question and looking at the document, so some things that I kind of pulled from that is that he has the first accurate depiction of the spine, first accurate illustration. He has the first documentation of liver disease, and he did this by cutting up corpses. Okay, but the quote that I think is probably most telling of the Renaissance at this time is this one right here. It says, more than 240 individual drawings and over 13,000 words of notes. In the Middle Ages and medieval times, people are like, well, we have bodies. We're not entirely sure how they all work together, how all the organs work together. We're not sure what the brain does. And in the Renaissance, they didn't know all those answers either. I mean, we're still learning about the brain every single day. But in the Renaissance, we have a little more systematic, scientific approach to looking at the body. All right, let's continue on to our next set of documents. So this is a little bit different. We have some art pieces as opposed to some documents. But even though we have documents, we still read, or sorry, even though we have pictures, we still read the pictures. So again, same setup that we saw in the set of documents before and in yesterday. On the left, we have medieval art. On the right, we have Renaissance art. And we are going to be comparing the two. All right. So the first picture that we have is by Mozarabic Batis in the late 10th century. And question 10 says, what elements of medieval art are shown in document 7? I'm going to kind of just mark up this document. So on your paper, you can jot down the answer to some of these questions. So feel free to pause and write down that question. What elements of medieval art are shown in document 7? And then when you replay, I'm going to walk you through kind of what I see when I look at this. Okay, so first thing that kind of stands out to me is that it is a religious picture. Okay, I know this because we have Jesus here who is dying on the cross, which is for Christians is a pretty significant event in Christianity. Additionally, we have these people. We know they are holy because they are represented with halos. So in this picture, for example, we have the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Okay, so we have this three-person Trinity. In medieval art, a lot of people look similar. This is kind of an exception to that rule. These people are supposed to look similar because in Christianity, it is believed they are all three the same person. Okay? But kind of a big takeaway here is that we have religious art is happening. Okay? It's a big feature of the Middle Ages. Second thing that I kind of think of when I look at this, and let me go ahead and erase this so it doesn't get too messy. Maybe. Okay, there we go. All right, so second thing that I kind of notice is the picture is very flat. There is not a lot of dimension here. So kind of looking at this arm here, it's a line. Okay, so there's not a lot of muscle movement. There's not a lot of tone. God here is kind of turned to the side and he lacks like a lot of, he just kind of seems flat on the page. You can see this in the Holy Spirit's eyes a little bit, how they're kind of both on the same side of his face, which doesn't really look like it's authentic. Okay, another thing that I noticed is that there's a lack of perspective and scale here. Jesus on the cross and then this house or castle or whatever it's supposed to be, they look like they're like an inch apart and they're like the same size. It's kind of unclear as to where this house or building actually is. And look at these people inside the house. Like this is the roof of the house, and then this is a person. Like not to scale in any way whatsoever. So it lacks that perspective and depth. Additionally, I'm looking at the people's faces who are in the art. And like I said, the people on the left, so these three people right here, are supposed to look like. Okay, they're the same person. So that's kind of irrelevant to my point that I'm making here. What I do notice about these people, these are not supposed to be the same people, is these three look almost exactly the same. Like there's not a lot of variation here. This guy looks a little bit more unique. He looks a little more individualized. But these three, I mean, they all look pretty much the same. So not a lot of individualism, not a lot of kind of making people look unique. So there's a couple of elements of medieval art that I noticed there. So next, and some notes that I wrote down is that there's religious figures, lack perspective, lack individualism, bland colors. Okay. Last thing, and I think I had this and I accidentally deleted it, is that it's not to scale. So what I mean by that is like the roof is like this big, and then the person is like 3 times the size of the roof. So like that's a little bit alarming. It's a very small roof or a very large person. I don't know. Okay, so question number 11 says, describe document 8. What elements of Renaissance art are shown in the painting? So looking at document 8, this is the School of Athens in 1509 by Raphael. If you want to Google this, you can just Google the School of Athens and the painting's going to show up. And feel free to pause so you can kind of go through the art itself. And then I will restart up the video once you press play and we will talk through it. Okay, so let's take a look at this art on the right, and you can still see the one on the left kind of for reference. The first thing that I think the School of Athens does really well is it shows perspective. Okay, so we can kind of see things moving out from the center of this picture. We have the center right here. Things get larger as they get closer to us. Kind of like I talked about, like if I look at this picture, like I assume Jesus is in the forefront to the left here because he is the largest thing in the picture. But then I look like in the bottom right here and I get kind of confused. Like right here, like this kind of looks like it's very close to me, so it's a little bit confusing. But in this picture to the right, it's very clear what is closer to me. And so that is what we call perspective. We kind of talked about that the other day. I'm sure you're probably mentioned perspective before, but that's kind of what that looks like in motion. Second thing that I kind of notice here is that there is a lot of Greek or Roman influence. If we look at this picture right here, that is a painting of Athena and Medusa, who are those Greek mythological characters. And we see here, we have, oh my gosh, his name just escaped me. Nike, the winged god, that is him right there. I know it's a little difficult to see, but his cape is trying to be in motion there. And then we see right here, I believe this is supposed to be Athena as well with her helmet that she has on. So we see the elements of Greek mythology in this. It is a ideal of Renaissance art. Remember, Renaissance is a rebirth, and that is going back to the times of ancient Greece and Rome. Another two people, sorry, we have from ancient Greece and Rome are right here in the middle. This is Aristotle and Plato. They were philosophers. So we see a lot of elements of ancient Greece and ancient Rome in this painting. All right, a couple of other things that tell me that this is a Renaissance painting besides the perspective and besides the figures that are there are some of the activities they are doing. Here we have people doing math, and there was a rebirth of math during the Renaissance. The kind of that focus on learning. Here we have people looking at a globe, kind of that reference to astronomy and the importance that astronomy will start to have in the Renaissance. And in general, like we have these groups of people just kind of debating and arguing. And it's not like they're kind of mad at each other, they're just discussing topics of time. So, debating the meaning of life or existential ideas, things like that, kind of that focus on learning. We see all these people right here are trying to learn from the philosophers who are in the center, so that that importance of education and teaching, reemergence of that idea during the Renaissance. And finally, there's just a lot more exciting colors. The picture on the left kind of has bland color usage. The picture on the right has more exciting. Don't get me wrong, I recognize the picture on the right is not like neon shiny colors, but in comparison, it is much more unique and vibrant colors that we have going on. Okay. So now that leaves us with question 12, and question 12 says, how does document 8 represent a development in art from document 7? So remember, we're comparing the two documents, and feel free to pause this if you want to pause it on the screen where you can see both. We're comparing the two documents and talking about how the document on the right, which represents Renaissance art, is a development, or you could think of it as improvement, from the art pieces on the left. So how has art changed? I mean, I think we could all pretty much argue that document 8 is a more artistic representation. But what is the growth that we see between these two art periods? All right, thanks for watching.